92% of households that start the year with Peloton are still active a year later.
92% because of a bike?
Not just bikes. We also make treadmills and rowers.
Oh, let me guess, for elite athletes only, right?
Nope. It doesn't matter if you're an avid exerciser or new to working out. Peloton can help you achieve your fitness goals. 92% stick with it. So can you. Try Peloton bikes, tread, or row risk-free with a 30-day home trial. New members only. Not available in remote locations. See additional terms at onepeloton.com/home-trial.
The Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xE. It's electrified.
Boogie, woogie, woogie.
So you can boogie woogie woogie into the forest.
Boogie.
Boogie woogie woogie through the mud. Or boogie woogie woogie to work, where you boogie woogie woogie down the hall to your boss's office to tell him you quit.
Sure got the boogie.
Then you boogie woogie woogie to the elevator as he boogie woogie woogies after you, begging, please, take me with you.
Boogie.
The electrified Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xE. Learn more at Jeep.com. Jeep is a registered trademark of FCA US LLC.
Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick. We're here to continue our discussion of that one play. And that one play is Mark Andrews' 68-yard touchdown reception against the Chargers in 2018, a big game-turning play to help beat the L.A. Chargers out in their tiny little soccer stadium that they were playing at in that era. Here to talk to me about it is Josh Hoffman. Josh, how you doing?
Pleasure and an honor as always, Ken. How are you?
Terrific, Josh, and really appreciate having you back on the show. You've done probably 4 or 5 of these pods over the years. Really appreciate having you back. Give us the setup a little bit on this as to where were the Ravens at this point in 2018?
Well, this was their first big win, as I recall it, where they beat a really tough team. So when Lamar took over, we started winning. We had beaten several under 500 teams, and then we played the Chiefs. At that point in the season, we were thinking that we needed to win every game. It was must-win territory, but it was still early enough in the season that we weren't positive about that. And then we had that game against the Chiefs. It was a nail-biter, very, very close game, but that was the first really tough team that we played, and we lost. Then we won. Let me see what happened after the Chiefs here. I've got my notes. So then we beat the Bucks. And now we're playing the Chargers, who I believe were tied with the Chiefs in the West over there. So they were 10-3 coming into the game. The Steelers had lost to the Saints. I believe was it the next week or was it the same week? I forgot.
I believe it was in that week that they lost because by the Ravens beating the Chargers and then the subsequent loss of the Steelers, which I believe is on Sunday. I could be wrong.
You're right. I think you're right. This was a night game. So anyway, this was the control our destiny game. So we had to have it unless we were going to get incredible luck to make the playoffs and first tough team. And there's a lot of really memorable things that happened in that game. But that play stood out to me as really the beginning of a big thing, the Lamar Andrews connection.
Yeah, it certainly was that. Before we get into that, though, I want to talk a little bit about scheduling because this game is just a nightmarish scheduling situation for the Ravens and patently unfair. So the Ravens had to travel to the West Coast after playing the previous Sunday and play on short rest against the Chargers. It was a game that got moved. Obviously a game of significance from that point of view, but also one that the Ravens, they didn't absolutely have to win or they didn't know that they had to win it to make the playoffs, but it turned out that they did need it to win the division, and it absolutely sucked having to go play that game on 6 days rest. And then, of course, the Chargers turned around and played the Ravens in the playoffs that year. And I thought this is a great opportunity for the NFL to return the favor and make the Ravens the 1 p.m. Saturday game on the East Coast and give the Chargers a little bit of that medicine back because the Chargers got a huge scheduling benefit playing on the short rest in their home place.
The Thursday night thing is ridiculous that they can't just do. I know you've mentioned this before,
Yes.
that they can't just do the bye week before the Thursday night games if they insist on doing Thursday night games. I don't know why it can't just be this way. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so this was a Saturday night, but it was a Sunday move to a Saturday game, and obviously one of those that really just hosed the Ravens in terms of the scheduling. But obviously the NFL didn't play tit for tat and give the Ravens the advantage in the playoffs. And they played that game on Sunday and didn't go the way the Ravens wanted, obviously, but that's life. But let's first of all talk about the Andrews play specifically and the setup within the game for it. I'm having trouble hearing you, Josh. You are muted right now.
Sorry about that.
That's usually me. Yep.
No, that time it was definitely me. I've been having that problem all day. So set up for the game, you said, right?
Yep.
So a lot of memorable things happened. Very first play of the game, big interception by Carr. He basically had this contested catch interception on the very first play of the game, took it away from I don't know what receiver on the Chargers. Very next play, Gus runs the ball for 44 yards. We ended up getting a field goal on that drive. Crabtree, I believe, had a sort of a contested catch that he did not catch. Ended up with a field goal. We're driving again shortly thereafter. I think this is the beginning of the second quarter. We had this horrible fumble. Lamar recovers it, but it killed the drive. Later on, same quarter, we're driving. We get a field goal, some really quality passing. I had forgotten, and still preparing for this and watching some of these highlights, how much really nice quality work Lamar was doing in the pocket, moving around, managing his space. He just looked really, really good to me. And some of these receivers did too. Anyhow, in the second quarter, it's 3-0. We get a field goal with 2 minutes left in the half approximately. Then the Chargers start driving. We got a big DPI call on Jefferson, then a big personal foul call on Weddle. And then the Chargers punch it in. Tucker has some of my notes are a little confusing to me.
I think that was just a field goal to make it 6-3 at the half, though.
I think you're right, because that's what my notes say. So I hope you and my notes are right. Tucker had a 65-yard field goal attempt that he did not make, which I had completely forgotten about. So it's 6-3 Ravens at halftime. So we come out, we start the half, and Dixon has his fumble, and then the Chargers punch it in, right?
Yeah, first play of the second half, Dixon fumbles, sets him up for a nice, easy 3-play drive to score.
So it's 10-6, and we were scared. And I don't know how many plays it was into the drive, but it was not many. Was this incredible pass to Andrews, 68 yards? It looked like about 70 to me, but I'll take your word for it that it was 68. Andrews in the seam, something we had not seen a whole lot of with him and Lamar, but we saw a whole lot of after that. And we had the lead. It was 13-10. We got another field goal later. It was 16-10. And then, of course, the game ended with another very memorable event, which was Patrick Onwuasu with the strip sack and Tavon Young returning it for a touchdown. And it was a tremendous, tremendous win. And we'd beaten this really tough team.
Yeah, it certainly was a great win. Let's go back and talk about the Andrews 68-yard play specifically, because that's the theme of the series here. What about it do you remember specifically?
It was just such a huge chunk play, and I was not used to seeing us get these huge chunk plays in the pass game. We didn't have a lot of them that year when Lamar took over, or really even before, early in the season. I think we had some, but then the offense started sputtering. We were dealing with the new Ravens. A friend of mine at the time said after maybe 2 games with Lamar as the starter that this was starting to look like a Ravens team to him. And I couldn't tell you exactly what that meant, but I know I agreed. Suddenly we were winning these close games, which we had not. There was some stat at the time where every game that was decided by, I think, less than 7 points had been a loss for something like 2 years, some crazy stat like that. So suddenly we're grinding it out and we're winning at the end, and we're sort of competing a little bit more. And, it felt like the games before that, things either worked or they didn't work. And if they didn't work, it didn't feel like we were winning. So it was just an entirely new time when we had this new quarterback, and none of us knew what to expect from him. Some people might have claimed it. I certainly had no idea what to expect. This play was, to me, the thing that I remembered all through the offseason. It, among other things, made me so confident in where we were going. And it just stuck into my mind as something that we could expect a lot more of. And I didn't know how right I would be, because the Lamar Andrews connection was probably the biggest thing about the passing game for, I would say, the last most consistent big thing for the entire time of Lamar's tenure so far.
He's certainly, that's been his biggest connection during this time. There's 2 things I kind of remember about the context of the game. One is that the Ravens had gone through a number of consecutive games running the ball effortlessly against the opposition. And the Chargers actually did the.
Looking for adventure in 2023? How does island hopping in Thailand sound? What about marveling at waterfalls in Iceland? Or tapas with your new BFFs in Seville? What about discovering the world with an awesome group of 18 to 35? Explore all of this and more with Kentucky. You'll sleep in the coolest accommodation and learn from local guides and experts. Visit Kentucky.com. That's CONTIKI.com to book your next adventure. Kentucky. Travel together.
Best of any team down the stretch during the Lamar time. Rushing yardage totals, by the way, by game. Against Cincinnati in his first game, they rushed for 267. That included 27 his own rushes. Then Oakland, 242. Atlanta, 207. Kansas City, 194. Tampa Bay, 242. Then they go into LA on the short rest game, and they only got 159. How many NFL teams would love to have 159 yards rushing in a game? And then they finished with 296 against Cleveland, the best total of the season in the game that Lamar had a couple scores and obviously was finished off in dramatic fashion. But that context I remember about the play in particular. It was one of those balls that we didn't see too many from Lamar. Lamar, likes to throw lasers to an open receiver and create space laterally, even more so then than now, in terms of being able to directly throw to a receiver. This one was actually a touch throw. This was thrown in a little bit over the top and caught in stride by Andrews. Beautifully thrown ball. If it had been a little underthrown, probably still would have been caught, but he would have been tackled. But it was thrown just properly. Andrews went the distance, and good catch, certainly. Plenty of yak. That was all good by Andrews, but that was, to me, it was basically a great throw by Lamar.
Absolutely. And like you said, not something we had seen a whole ton of. By the way, I have Lamar had 13 carries for 39 yards in that game and 204 yards passing. So definitely an outlier in that respect, because I'm looking at his rushing totals. The lowest I can find is, I think, 67. And Mark Andrews, not a lot of receptions. I have Ravens Bengals. He had one catch for 19 yards against the Raiders, one for 74. A play I do not remember, but apparently it was a big one. Ravens Falcons, Andrews had 3 catches for 47, no catches in the Chiefs game. Ravens Bucks, 2 for 31. Then we have the Chargers games where he had only 2 catches for 83 yards. And then the final game of the year, Andrews 4 for 54. So it was a different Mark Andrews. But it was the beginning. It was the beginning of something great.
Something going on that I've talked about occasionally. The 11.04 yards per target for Mark Andrews in his rookie season is still the Ravens record. It hasn't really been approached before or since in terms of anybody getting close to that kind of level. But there's an element of this that went on, is that Lamar did not throw a lot of go get it for me balls to Andrews in 2018, even though they had a connection, certainly, and they played together some on with the second team, for example, in practice some. But Lamar really threw less, and then that meant that Andrews had less marginal targets, less targets on the margin, less contested catch balls, and it meant he had a very impactful season in terms of his yards per catch. Probably also was getting less attention from the defense, honestly, as a rookie. But it's been something I've always speculated about for receivers, is that if you could get them less targets, if you could spread the ball around more, you make all of the individual players potentially more effective on an individual basis. And most quarterbacks, they do need a bailout guy, and it became the natural that Andrews became Lamar's bailout guy, which I think reduced his yards per target and his effectiveness in general over the seasons, and including a number of interceptions that have been thrown on balls that where Andrews was targeted over the last several years.
I think you're right. And it's been pretty well documented, especially in 2022, that a lot of people who are smarter than me pointed out that a lot of the route combinations seem to be designed to get Andrews open. It seemed like everybody else was a decoy far too often. There was even a couple of times where Andrews wasn't in the game, where people we know and who do a lot of good film breakdowns were saying, the offense maybe looks a little bit better without Andrews in there, which is just crazy. But there was something to it. So yeah, something definitely happened. There's definitely something to what you were saying. This long yardage Andrews really was like a wide receiver kind of Andrews.
Is the passer rating throwing to him by year: 2018 124.7, 2019 114.0, 2020 112.0. Those are all fantastic. 2021 92.5. That included 9 interceptions.
Wow.
2022 90.8, a career low. So obviously the last couple of years he suffered from Huntley being in there at the end of the year, both years significantly, but it's still obviously a lot of those interceptions still in 2021 were Lamar interceptions. And it has been an unfortunate fact of life that he's been a magnet for coverage and tip balls and some other things have created some interceptions there.
Yeah, he sure has. How about Kenneth Dixon, the end of that season? Something I have to bring up when I was watching these highlights. This man was running tough. I do not have the stats, but he had just come off injured reserve. I think the Bucs was his first game back. And he was, oh man, he was nasty. Gus Edwards was showing up really big too.
Huge year.
I have a few. His first game back, I think, was the Bucs, and he had 11 carries for 48 yards. There was an interesting thing that came up and became a bit of a controversy this year. You see Dixon and Edwards both getting 17, 18, 19 carries in a game. So we still did do lead backs back then. Mm-hmm. I know that's not a thing anymore.
It was at the end of that year. Dixon actually didn't run that much against the Chargers. 8 for 28 in the game. I'm sure he had some big runs in there. Don't get me wrong, but Edwards was he had his first real action. He did have 10 carries against Tennessee for 42, but his first real action was in Lamar's first game, and so they basically entered together. And Edwards had 17 for 115, and Lamar had 27. Actually, it looks like 26 carries now for 119 in that game. So both bell cows in their own way. And Gus Edwards, boy, if he's not a Raven next year, it'll be sad. And obviously, I understand why it might have to happen. But he's been the most consistent runner in NFL history through these 4 seasons he's actually played for the Ravens.
Yeah, he's been great. I remember when he was first starting in 2018, we had what people were calling a lot of one-hit wonders, and thinking was that he might be another one of those. But I always liked him, and I think he's proven himself. He looks different, by the way. A few people's physiques look different. I was looking at Nick Boyle that year. He was huge compared to how he looked this year and last year, and so was Gus. Obviously, he's trimmed down. That one everybody has noticed.
I don't know if there was another UDFA in 2018, but obviously Edwards was the most significant one. But it seems almost unfair the Ravens get a UDFA in a year like that where they have a draft like they did. It's just most one-sided set of personnel pickups you could have.
One of the best drafts ever. Absolutely.
All right, we got to call it here, Josh. I'm sorry, but yeah, really appreciate having you on, my friend. This is great stuff and great to relive some of the 2018 stretch drive highlighted by that great catch by Andrews. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
On Twitter, you can find me at Josh_E_Hoffman. If you haven't blocked me, if you have blocked me, that's okay. You can unblock me and we can still talk football.
All right. There must be something behind that story, but I don't know it anyway. I've never had to block you. Other folks out there, if you'd like to do a show as well, love to have you on. Just DM me on Twitter with whatever play you'd like to talk about. A lot have been taken, but there's a whole lot that have not been. I'll be putting a few suggestions out there from time to time, just in case somebody wants to pick up on some plays that haven't been taken. For instance, nobody has picked up on Ray Lewis's end zone interception in the first Ravens game of them all. If you'd like that, let me know. And you got it. Josh, thanks again for coming on.
Ken, thank you so much for having me, as always.
Pleasure. We'll talk to you next time on Film Study.